Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're tackling a really fundamental skill, something that can unlock a whole new level of fluency and confidence in English.
Which is?
Expressing your opinions naturally. We've got a fantastic source here, a resource specifically designed to help you move beyond, the basics.
That's right. And it really gets at a common pain point for many English learners. They might have a solid grasp of grammar, vocabulary even, but when it comes to actually jumping into a discussion, sharing a thought,
Yeah. Or agreeing with someone.
or even disagreeing politely, they feel a bit stuck, limited.
Right. They fall back on just, I think, or I agree.
Exactly. Which, look, they're correct. Nothing wrong with them grammatically.
They can sound a little stiff.
A little stiff, yeah, or just repetitive in a real flowing conversation.
And that's the heart of it, isn't it? Real conversations, whether
Yeah.
you're just, chatting with friends over coffee, participating in a group meeting at work, or maybe even debating a topic you feel strongly about, they need more fluidity.
Yeah, they need personality.
They require you to sound like you, expressing your unique perspective in a way that feels comfortable and engaging.
Precisely. And the source material we're looking at today addresses this head on. It provides like a toolkit of phrases and strategies. It's
Right.
about adding color and nuance to your communication, making it clear you're not just, repeating facts, but sharing your actual thoughts and feelings.
So our mission in this deep dive is to really explore this resource thoroughly. We're going to pull out the key phrases, the techniques it recommends.
And generate a ton of examples, right?
Yeah.
Go beyond just the ones in the source.
Absolutely. Really dig into the subtle differences so you can choose the right words to express yourself exactly how you mean to.
Okay, so we'll be focusing on 4 core areas, basically following the structure in the source. First, giving your own opinion with more confidence and variety. Second, agreeing with others in a way that feels natural and, supportive.
Important.
Third, handling disagreements respectfully, which, let's face it, is often the trickiest part.
Oh, definitely. And fourth,
And fourth, adding that crucial element of engagement, that personality, to make your opinions memorable and just make you sound more like a native speaker in conversation.
great. So the goal by the end of this is to give you practical, actionable tools.
Yeah, phrases you can start using, like today,
Right.
to feel more comfortable, more fluent, and more authentically you in any English discussion.
Absolutely. It's like adding several new gears to your conversational engine.
Good analogy.
And we're diving straight into that first key area right now, giving your opinion with confidence, using varied language.
Right. And the source really emphasizes moving beyond the default, I think.
Yeah, which is everywhere.
It is. And it's not because I think is wrong. It's
Yeah.
perfectly fine. But just relying on it limits your ability to express, subtle differences.
Like how certain you are.
Exactly. Or how personal the opinion is, or maybe how formal the context is. Variety is just key to sounding natural and fluent.
It's like having just one tool in your toolbox, right? You can hammer a nail, but you can't really build anything complex.
That's a good way to put it. And the source gives us several really powerful alternatives.
Okay, let's list them out. We've got, in my opinion, personally, I believe, from my perspective, I'd say that. And as far as I'm concerned,
Right. And each one offers a slightly different nuance, a different way of framing your viewpoint. Let's break them down one by one.
okay, first up, in my opinion, the source gives a clear example. In my opinion, learning a new language is one of the best ways to expand your thinking. Pretty straightforward, right?
Very. It's a direct and, I think, universally understood way to introduce your viewpoint.
Yeah.
It just clearly labels what follows as your personal view.
And it works pretty much anywhere, formal, informal.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
It signals you're about to offer a judgment, maybe a belief, or an evaluation.
Okay, let's generate some more examples then for, in my opinion. So we're talking about environmental policies.
Okay.
You could say, in my opinion, stricter regulations on industrial emissions are absolutely necessary for the health of our planet.
Right. Or discussing education, maybe something like, in my opinion, encouraging critical thinking skills is way more important than just rote memorization.
Or even for something lighter, like food preferences.
Oh, yeah. In my opinion, cilantro tastes like soap, and I just don't get people who like it.
Huh. Okay. Or about technology.
Sure. In my opinion, that new software update actually made the program slower and, less user-friendly.
It just works anywhere you want to state your view clearly. In my opinion, summer is the best season, even though it gets really hot.
Correct. Unambiguous. Okay, moving on. The source lists, personally, I
Yeah.
believe. Now, adding that personally at the start, that makes a difference, doesn't it?
It really does. It puts the emphasis squarely on your individual conviction. It sort of suggests this belief is deeply held by you.
Yeah, maybe based on personal experience or your values.
Right. And it might even implicitly acknowledge that, hey, other people might not share this view. And I believe also tends to sound a bit stronger than I think, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, it carries more weight. The source example for this ties it to remote work. Personally, I believe remote work is fantastic because it gives people more flexibility.
You can almost hear the conviction in that, the sort of personal endorsement.
hmm It feels like something they've experienced directly or just strongly feel is true for them.
Okay, let's create more examples for personally, I believe.
Yeah,
How about personal development?
good topic.
Personally, I believe setting small, achievable goals is the key to making real progress.
Nice. Or maybe about a social issue. Personally, I believe access to affordable healthcare is a fundamental human right. Strong conviction there.
Yeah. Or discussing, say, a creative process.
Okay. Personally, I believe the best ideas often come when you're not actively trying to think of them, but when you're relaxed.
That's a good one. Even simple things work. Personally, I believe it's better to arrive 10 minutes early than 1 minute late.
Right. It's like a personal principle you hold. The personally just makes it feel more like a statement about your values or maybe deeply held convictions.
Okay. Next up, we have from my perspective. This phrase feels a bit different again.
It does, from my perspective. Frames your opinion as like one way of seeing things. It inherently acknowledges that there might be other valid perspectives out there.
So you're sharing how the issue looks to you from your specific position or understanding or experience.
Exactly. It's often used when you're discussing something complex, something with multiple angles. You're basically saying, based on where I'm standing, or based on my understanding, this is how it appears to me.
Right. The source doesn't actually give a specific example for this one, so we'll need to build from scratch here.
Okay, let's do it. Maybe you're talking about the challenges of a project at work.
Okay. From my perspective, the main hurdle we face is communication between the different departments.
Perfect. You're highlighting an issue based on how you see the project unfolding from your position within it.
Or maybe discussing a piece of abstract art.
Yeah. From my perspective, the painting evokes a sense of peaceful solitude, but I can totally see how someone else might interpret it differently. You offer your view, but you acknowledge the subjectivity.
How about current events? Something like, from my perspective, the recent changes in policy haven't fully addressed the root causes of the problem.
Right. You're giving your analysis based on your understanding of the situation, implicitly open to other analyses existing.
Or even talking about daily life, like working from home.
Sure. From my perspective, working from home has significantly improved my work-life balance. You're sharing your personal experience as the basis, but acknowledging others might have had different experiences.
It feels like a slightly softer way to offer an opinion, maybe? Less like stating a universal truth.
And more like sharing how you experience something.
Yeah.
That's a good way to think about it.
That distinction is really helpful. It's not just a synonym for I think. It carries that extra layer of acknowledging other views might exist.
Exactly. Which brings us nicely to, I'd say that.
Yeah.
This one feels very conversational.
It does. I'd say that is a really common, natural-sounding way to introduce an opinion. Often a bit less formal, maybe less assertive than, in my opinion, or I believe.
Yeah, it sort of softens the opinion slightly. It's like you're offering your thought or observation
Yeah.
as maybe a suggestion or a mild conclusion. Very versatile, fits easily into casual chat.
Right. The source uses I'd say later with an example adding humor, which we'll get to. But for just introducing an opinion, let's generate some standard uses.
Okay.
How about a movie you liked? I'd say that movie was surprisingly good. The plot twists really kept me hooked.
Nice. Or about a practical skill. I'd say learning basic first aid is something everyone should probably do.
Or evaluating a proposal at work.
I'd say that proposal has a lot of potential, but, we need to look at the budget more closely.
Yeah. Or even something about routines.
I'd say getting a little bit of exercise every day is probably better than doing a lot just once a week.
It's also useful for giving estimations or general assessments too, isn't it? Like, I'd say that project will take at least 2 weeks to complete.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a comfortable everyday phrase. Okay, finally, the source lists, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
This one has a unique flavor. It feels almost like you're setting a boundary around your opinion.
It does, as far as I'm concerned, often introduces an opinion that's kind of limited to what matters to you or what's relevant to you in a particular context.
Right. It can sometimes imply that you might be disregarding other factors or perspectives that you don't consider relevant for yourself or in this specific discussion. Or maybe you're just stating your view on a very specific aspect of something.
It focuses the opinion. The source gives an example also about remote work, but with a kind of caveat. As far as I'm concerned, it's a great option, but it depends on the person's job and lifestyle.
See how that, but it depends,
Yeah.
reinforces the limitation. Your view is positive within the scope of what matters to you, but you acknowledge there are external factors.
Okay, let's try more examples to really know that nuance. How about a new rule at work?
Okay?
As far as I'm concerned, the new software is an improvement because it automates the tedious parts of my job. See? You're focusing only on its impact on your specific tasks.
Perfect example. Or discussing a piece of news. As far as I'm concerned, the most important takeaway from that report is the impact on local businesses. You're highlighting the specific aspect that is most significant to you.
Mm-hmm. Or even a personal preference, maybe with a hint of finality.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, you just can't beat a simple cup of black coffee in the morning. It's like your definitive stance on that specific thing, maybe implying you don't really care for fancy lattes or whatever.
Yeah, it can sometimes have a slightly assertive tone, like, this is my view and this is what matters to me. But it can also simply be a way to clearly state your position within a limited scope.
So thinking about all these alternatives, in my opinion, personally, I believe, from my perspective, I'd say that. As far as I'm concerned, wow, they give you so much more range than just sticking with, I think.
Absolutely. Choosing the right one lets you subtly convey confidence, nuance, personal conviction, or a specific focus. It shows you're actually thinking about how you're presenting your ideas.
Which is a key part of fluency, right?
Totally. It makes you sound more deliberate, more sophisticated, even in just a casual conversation. The simple act of using one of these alternatives makes your speech more dynamic.
Yeah, it really does.
And the great part is you don't need to, overthink it constantly. With practice, you'll start to intuitively pick the phrase that best fits what you want to say and the context you're in.
Right. It's about expanding your options, not replacing, I think, entirely. Just having these in your back pocket means you have a choice.
Exactly.
Okay, so moving on from sharing your own opinion, the source material then guides us to the other side of the conversation, agreeing with others.
Ah, yes. Because conversation is fundamentally interactive, isn't it? Someone else shares their thoughts, and you need to respond.
Mm-hmm.
And the source correctly points out that just saying, I agree, can sometimes sound a bit abrupt. Or maybe flat.
It's functional, yeah, but it doesn't really add much energy or detail to the conversation flow. More natural agreement often involves not just saying you agree, but also showing how much you agree, or maybe adding a small related point.
Yes. And the source provides some great alternatives for this.
Okay, what do we got?
Phrases like, I completely agree with you. That's a great point. I could agree more. You're absolutely right. And exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Okay, let's start with I completely agree with you. Nice and clear, and that word completely signals strong agreement.
It leaves no doubt about where you stand. Now, the source provides an example tied to exercise and mental health. Someone says, exercise is really important for mental health.
Okay.
The suggested response isn't just, I agree. It's, you're absolutely right. Exercise helps reduce stress and keeps you energized.
Ah, that's a critical detail. So the example actually uses, you're absolutely right, another phrase from the list, but crucially, it follows it up by adding something.
Exactly. A brief reason why the original statement is right, or maybe an expansion on the idea. This is how natural agreement often works. It builds on the previous point.
So you're validating their statement and showing you've engaged with it by adding a related thought.
Precisely. Let's generate some examples using I completely agree with you, but in that expanded way.
Okay. If someone says, the public transport system here is actually quite efficient, you could reply.
How about, I completely agree with you. I find the buses and trains are usually on time, which makes commuting so much easier.
Perfect. You agree and add a supporting observation based on your own experience. Or if they comment, reading fiction is a fantastic way to develop empathy.
You might say, oh, I completely agree with you. Stepping into different characters' shoes really does broaden your understanding of human experience, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You echo their point and elaborate slightly.
Nice. Okay, next one. That's a great point. This one feels like it specifically validates the quality of what they said.
Yeah, you're kind of complimenting their insight. You're saying what you just said is valuable or insightful or particularly relevant.
Right, and the source uses this in the exercise example too, right?
Yeah.
That's a great point. I always feel better after a workout. Again, agreeing and adding that personal example.
So if someone observes, say, I think the historical context is really important to understanding the motivations in that novel, you could say.
Ah, that's a great point. Without knowing the social climate of the time, you definitely miss a lot of the subtlety. You affirm their observation and explain why it's a great point.
Or if they say, I think we need to consider the long-term environmental impact of this decision, you could respond.
That's a great point. Yeah, we can't just think about the immediate costs. The future has to be part of the equation.
Yeah.
You validate the importance of their consideration.
Okay, now for a really strong one. I couldn't agree more. This implies, like, maximum agreement.
It does. It's impossible for you to agree more than you currently do. It's a very emphatic way to show you are 100% completely aligned with what the other person said.
Yeah, it's great for moments when you feel particularly strongly about something they've said.
Okay, example time. If someone says, teachers are some of the most undervalued professionals in society, you could reply.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. The impact they have is just immense, and they deserve so much more support and recognition. You express that strong agreement and give the reason behind your feeling.
Or if they complain, maybe trying to learn a new skill while working full-time is incredibly challenging.
You might say, ugh, I couldn't agree more. It requires so much discipline and time management, doesn't it? You completely validate their struggle.
Okay. Then we have, you're absolutely right. This is also a very strong affirmation, similar feel to, I completely agree.
Yes, absolutely right is similar in strength. It directly confirms the truth or validity of the other person's statement from your perspective. We saw it used in the source's main exercise example. You're absolutely right. Exercise helps reduce stress and keeps you energized.
Right. So if someone says investing in renewable energy is going to be crucial for the future, you could say.
You're absolutely right. The move away from fossil fuels is inevitable, really, and we need to be prepared. You confirm their statement and add that related consequence.
Or if they point out a problem like, that traffic light at the intersection isn't timed correctly.
You could respond, oh, you're absolutely right. It stays red for way too long when there's no cross traffic. Drives me crazy. You confirm their observation with your own supporting detail.
Yeah. Okay, finally, exactly. That's what I was thinking. This one feels fantastic for building connection.
It really is. Exactly. By itself shows pinpoint agreement. But adding, that's what I was thinking, makes it personal.
Right. You're revealing you had the same idea or conclusion independently.
Yeah, it creates that moment of shared perspective, that great minds think alike feeling.
So if someone suggests, maybe we should try brainstorming this problem together instead of working separately, you could jump in with.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. I bet we'll come up with better ideas collectively. You affirm their suggestion and share that it was on your mind too.
Or if they comment on a difficult situation. This situation is actually a lot more complicated than it looks on the surface.
You might say, exactly. That's what I was thinking. There are just so many hidden factors at play here. It reinforces their assessment and shows you're right there with them on the same page.
These phrases for agreement are just so much more dynamic than only saying, I agree.
They really are.
They let you express the degree of your agreement, show appreciation for the other person's point, and often add that little extra bit of information or perspective that keeps the conversation flowing.
They make you an active participant in the agreement, rather than just a passive receiver of the idea. And that really helps build rapport, makes the conversation feel more natural, more engaging.
It's all about making the interaction richer. Okay, so we've covered giving your opinion, and we've covered agreeing. Now, for the part many learners find most challenging, and honestly, many native speakers too, disagreeing politely.
Absolutely. This is a big one. Because disagreement is, well, it's a completely normal and necessary part of healthy conversation and critical thinking.
Right. Different ideas clash, and that's how we explore issues from all sides.
But the difficulty is doing it in a way that doesn't shut down the dialogue or, make the other person feel attacked or defensive.
Exactly. The source really emphasizes how you disagree. A blunt, I disagree or you're wrong, can feel like a direct contradiction of the person, not just their idea.
Yeah, it can instantly create tension. So the key strategy the source highlights, and it's crucial, is acknowledging the other person's view first.
Before you introduce your different perspective?
Yes, that step is vital. It shows respect for their contribution. It signals that you've actually listened and understood what they said, even if you're about to present a different viewpoint. It just softens that transition into your differing opinion.
And the phrases the source suggests all follow this pattern, right?
They do. Let's go through them. We have, I see your point, but, hearage. I get what you're saying, but I feel differently. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, but I think, I respect your opinion, but I have a different view. And I get where you're coming from, but I see it differently.
Okay, let's start with, I see your point, but. The source's example was about social media. Someone says, I think social media is bad for society.
And a polite disagreement using this phrase could be, I see your point, but I think social media has some benefits too, like keeping people connected.
That structure works beautifully. I see your point. That's the acknowledgement. I understand the logic or the argument you're making. And then the but is the pivot. However, my view is different. You're validating their perspective before offering your alternative. It's much smoother.
It really is. Let's generate some more examples for I see your point, but.
Yeah.
Suppose someone argues for longer working hours to increase productivity.
Okay, tricky one.
You could say, I see your point. More hours could mean more output in the short term, but I think it could also lead to burnout and maybe decrease long-term productivity.
You acknowledge their logic, but present that counter-argument.
Or maybe discussing a design choice. Like, I see your point, making the button red would definitely grab attention, but I think keeping it blue aligns better with our brand's overall color scheme and feels less, jarring.
Perfect. You understand the rationale, but you're prioritizing a different factor. Okay, next. I get what you're saying, but I feel differently. This is very close to I see your point, isn't it? It is, but maybe I get what you're saying leans slightly more towards understanding the content of their message. While I feel differently clearly states that your personal assessment or your gut feeling about the matter isn't the same.
That's a good nuance. So, if someone argues for a specific investment strategy based purely on data,
you could say, I get what you're saying about the market indicators, I see the numbers, but I feel differently. I think you also need to consider the ethical implications of that company's practices. You understand their data-driven logic, but base your disagreement on a different criterion ethics.
right, or regarding a decision about a team's direction. I get what you're saying about focusing on speed, but I feel differently. I think prioritizing quality, even if it takes a bit longer, will be better for our reputation in the long run. You understand their logic, but your priority or feeling about the best approach differs.
Okay. The source also gives us, that's an interesting perspective, but I think, Cole, this one feels perhaps the softest way to start, especially if their view is unexpected or genuinely makes you pause.
I agree. Calling something an interesting perspective is a very polite way to acknowledge it without necessarily agreeing with it at all. It suggests you've considered it, or maybe that it offers a novel viewpoint you hadn't considered.
And then the but, I think, introduces your differing opinion. The source example was also about social media. That's an interesting perspective, but I actually think it depends on how people use it.
This phrase is perfect when someone says something you genuinely hadn't thought of, or something that seems quite different from your own view. For instance, discussing a historical event.
Okay.
That's an interesting perspective. I hadn't really thought of it that way before. But I think the evidence from that period suggests the primary motivation was actually economic rather than political. You complement their viewpoint before offering yours based on evidence.
Or about a book's theme. That's an interesting perspective. I didn't see that symbolism at all. But I think the author was primarily exploring themes of family and inheritance in that chapter. You acknowledge their interpretation before offering your alternative reading.
Okay, then we have, I respect your opinion, but I have a different view. This one is very direct about showing respect, isn't it?
It is. This phrase feels particularly useful when you're discussing maybe sensitive or potentially controversial topics, where it's really vital to explicitly state that you value the other person's right to their viewpoint, even if yours is opposing.
Absolutely. The source example was simple. I respect your opinion, but I feel differently about that.
Let's apply it. Maybe discussing differing political views.
Okay.
Look, I respect your opinion on the new healthcare bill, I really do, but I have a different view. I believe it won't adequately address the needs of the most vulnerable populations. You prioritize respect while still clearly stating your disagreement.
Or maybe about deeply held beliefs or lifestyle choices. I respect your opinion on that lifestyle choice, but I have a different view. I believe a different approach leads to better outcomes based on what I've seen or experienced. It maintains politeness even when discussing fundamental differences.
Mm-hmm. Finally, I get where you're coming from, but I see it differently. This phrase seems to add a layer of empathy or understanding of their background or reasoning.
Yes, exactly. I get where you're coming from. Suggests you understand their motivation, maybe their background, or the path that led them to their conclusion. You're acknowledging their context.
And then, but I see it differently states your divergent viewpoint, perhaps based on your own different background or analysis.
Right. Suppose someone is explaining why they made a difficult personal decision, you might say.
Wow. Okay. I get where you're coming from. That sounds like it was an incredibly tough situation with a lot of pressure involved. But I see it differently. I wonder if exploring option B might have been a more sustainable path in the long run. You show empathy for their situation first before offering your alternative assessment.
That's a great example. Or discussing a regional issue with someone who actually lives there. Okay, I get where you're coming from. Living there, I can understand why that local issue feels so pressing and immediate. But I see it differently. I think the problem might actually be symptomatic of a larger national trend we're seeing. You acknowledge their local perspective, but then offer a broader view.
These polite disagreement phrases are just absolutely essential for navigating conversations constructively, aren't they?
Totally. They prevent arguments, or try to, and instead foster healthy discussion where different ideas can be explored without causing personal offense.
They allow you to contribute your unique perspective and challenge ideas respectfully.
Which is crucial for critical thinking and effective collaboration, really, in any language.
Okay, so we've covered giving your opinion, agreeing, and disagreeing. The final piece from the source material is about adding personality and making your opinions sound more engaging.
Right. This is where you really start to sound less like you're reading from a textbook and more like, well, a fluent native speaker.
Making it sound like you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Natural conversation isn't just about the core message. It's also about the wrapper, the tone, the little additions that make you relatable and interesting to listen to.
And the source highlights two key ways to do this.
Yeah. Using natural introductory expressions and injecting emotion or humor.
Okay, let's dive into those introductory expressions first. The ones mentioned are, honestly, I think. To be fair, I'd say. And if you ask me.
Right. Honestly, I think, adds that sense of sincerity, doesn't it? Or maybe a gentle emphasis on the truthfulness of your statement. It signals you're about to share your genuine, perhaps kind of unfiltered thought on something.
Yeah, the source example is, honestly, I think learning English is one of the best investments in yourself. It sounds heartfelt, right? Like a genuine conviction being shared openly.
It does. Let's try some more. Talking about maybe a difficult truth.
Okay. Honestly, I think we underestimated how complex this project was going to be.
Good one. Or giving sincere advice. Honestly, I think you should really go for that opportunity. You've got nothing to lose.
It can also add just a slight weight or seriousness to an opinion, even if the topic is casual. Like, honestly, I think this gloomy weather is making everyone a little bit grumpy today.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Okay, next. To be fair, I'd say. This phrase is great for introducing a balance point, maybe a concession, or a viewpoint that acknowledges a different side of an issue.
Often to provide a fairer assessment.
Right, exactly. It's about presenting a point that you feel is just or reasonable, perhaps counterbalancing something negative that was just said, or acknowledging a difficulty or constraint.
The source didn't actually provide an example here, but it's a really common and useful phrase in conversation.
Super common. Okay, so suppose someone is criticizing a difficult boss, maybe unfairly. You might say, well, to be fair, I'd say she's under immense pressure from upper management right now. You're not necessarily defending bad behavior, but you're adding a factor that might explain some of it, offering a fairer assessment of the whole situation.
Right. Or someone is complaining about the cost of something.
You could say, well, to be fair, I'd say the quality of the materials is really exceptional, which probably explains the higher price.
Yeah.
You're balancing the complaint about cost with a positive point about quality. It shows you're considering multiple angles.
Good examples. And then, if you ask me, this one is definitely on the informal side.
Oh, yeah. If you ask me,
Right.
is a very casual way to offer your personal opinion, often when it hasn't been explicitly requested, but you want to contribute it anyway.
It's like saying, here's my 2 cents, or in my personal view, but more casual.
Very conversational, very friendly. The source's example is perfectly illustrative. If you ask me, coffee is better than tea any day. It's just a lighthearted personal preference introduced casually.
More examples. About a decision being made. If you ask me, the simplest solution is usually the best one.
Or about a group plan. If you ask me, we should probably leave a bit earlier to avoid the worst of the rush hour traffic. It's a low-pressure way to just throw your opinion into the ring.
Using these introductory phrases just makes your opinions sound more integrated into the flow of conversation, doesn't it?
Totally. They prepare the listener. They add that layer of your personal speaking style.
And that leads us right into the final and maybe the most fun technique from this section, adding emotion or humor.
Yes. This is where your personality can really shine through. And the source gives some wonderfully vivid examples here.
They really do.
These examples are designed to show how native speakers often use maybe a little exaggeration, relatable scenarios, or just lighthearted humor to make their points more memorable and engaging.
Okay, the first one is a classic debate topic delivered with humor. I'd say pineapple on pizza is a crime, but that's just me.
See how they combine, I'd say, that hyperbolic statement, a crime,
Yeah.
and then they soften it slightly at the end with, but that's just me.
Yeah. It's a strong, funny take on a common, low-stakes issue. You're not just stating a preference, you're kind of performing a mini opinion piece that gets a reaction.
You instantly get the speaker's personality and their strong, but obviously not serious feeling about pineapple on pizza.
Let's generate some more in this style. About a chore you hate.
Okay, honestly, I think ironing shirts was invented by someone who actively hated joy.
Huh, okay, that works. It's an exaggerated, humorous take on a mundane task. Or about a daily annoyance.
How about if you ask me, people who stand on the left side of the escalator and block everyone should face a minor, inconvenience fine, using humor and slight exaggeration to express relatable frustration.
Okay. Another source example used strong emotion through comparison. Honestly, I'd rather wake up at 5 a.m. than sit in traffic for 2 hours.
This works because it uses a relatable negative experience waking up extremely early to emphasize just how much they despise sitting in traffic. It's evocative, it's personal.
Right, we can apply this pattern widely. About a food you dislike.
Honestly, I'd rather watch paint dry than eat Brussels sprouts, using that cliche of boredom to express extreme dislike.
Or about something you find incredibly tedious.
To be fair, I'd say reviewing that 100-page dense report felt like wading through treacle. Using a metaphor to convey slowness and difficulty with a touch of, exasperation.
These examples aren't just about stating opinions correctly. They're about stating them expressively.
Exactly. Adding emotion, using a bit of exaggeration, making relatable comparisons, or injecting humor makes you a much more interesting and memorable speaker.
It shifts your English from being just grammatically sound
to being genuinely communicative and expressive. It shows the listener how you feel about what you're talking about, not just what you think. And that's a huge part of natural communication.
And that brings us pretty much to the end of our deep dive into this source material. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground.
We really have.
Exploring how to give your opinion with more variety, agree naturally, disagree politely, and add that crucial element of engagement and personality.
Exactly. We've hopefully moved beyond just the basic I think and I agree to give you, the listener, a much richer palette of phrases and techniques for expressing yourself in, any conversation.
So the core ideas are really to embrace variety in how you introduce your opinions. In my opinion, personally, I believe, etc.
Use phrases that show the strength and nature of your agreement. I couldn't agree more. That's a great point.
Navigate disagreement by first acknowledging the other person's view. I see your point, but that's an interesting perspective.
And make your speech more lively with those introductory phrases, honestly, if you ask me. And maybe touches of emotion or humor where it feels right.
Integrating these strategies will genuinely help you sound more natural, more fluent, and significantly more confident when you speak English.
They really are the characteristics of authentic, engaging conversation.
And the source material doesn't just list these things, it actually challenges you to use them. It proposes a practical task, and we really want to pass that challenge on to you, our listener.
Yeah, because this is where the real progress happens, right? Knowledge is potential power. Practice is where it becomes real skill.
Okay, so step 1 of the challenge.
Find a conversation where you can express your opinion. This could be anything, talking about a movie you saw, discussing a news story, sharing thoughts on a hobby, whatever comes up naturally.
Okay.
Step 2.
In that conversation, make a conscious effort to use at least one of the alternative phrases for giving your opinion that we discussed today. Try to go beyond just, I think. Also, if the chance arises, use one of the phrases for agreeing or disagreeing politely. And maybe try to make your response a little more engaging. Use an introductory phrase. Add a touch of personality like we talked about in the last section.
And step 3, which is maybe the most important step for learning.
Reflect. After the conversation, just take a few moments to think about it. How did it feel using those new phrases? Did you feel more confident? Which phrases felt most comfortable or effective for you? What could you try to improve or maybe do differently the next time you have a similar conversation?
Yeah, that reflection step is so crucial for solidifying the learning. It helps you become more aware of your own communication style and how these new phrases actually fit in. And don't worry, if it feels a little awkward at first.
Oh, totally normal.
Completely normal when you're trying something new. Just keep practicing. The awkwardness definitely fades with repetition.
The more you use these phrases, the more they'll just become a natural part of your active vocabulary.
Exactly.
Now, the source material also gives us a little peek at what's coming next, building on these foundations of expressing opinions and engaging in dialogue.
Which is storytelling in English.
Right. Another incredibly powerful skill for natural conversation.
It really is. Once you can confidently share your thoughts, being able to weave in a story or an anecdote or explain a process adds so much depth and interest to your communication.
It makes perfect sense. You can state your opinion and then maybe back it up with a brief personal story or use a narrative to illustrate your point more vividly.
And the source notes suggest we'll likely look at things like basic story structure, mastering those essential past tenses for narration, and techniques for keeping your listener hooked from start to finish.
It's another layer of building that genuine fluency, moving beyond just exchanging information to actually sharing experiences and connecting with others on a more, well, human level.
Absolutely.
So, lots more to explore in future deep dives. But for today, let's stay focused on this material we've covered. This resource and our discussion today really brings home an important point. Your opinion matters.
Yes, your unique perspective, your thoughts, your feelings, they are valid and interesting.
And learning to express them effectively in English using this wider range of tools, it isn't just about sounding more fluent.
No, it's about empowering yourself to participate fully in discussions, to share who you are, and to connect with people on a deeper level.
So think about the conversations you're going to have this week or this month. What topics are you eager to share your opinion on now that you have these new phrases and techniques ready to go?
Because the ability to articulate your thoughts, agree respectfully, disagree constructively, it doesn't just improve your language skills, it fundamentally shapes your interactions, your relationships,
Your ability to influence, collaborate,
and simply contribute meaningfully to the world around you. It's a vital part of finding and using your voice effectively.
So give it a try today. Pick just one phrase, maybe use it in a conversation, and reflect on how it felt.
Keep practicing, keep exploring, and definitely keep sharing your voice in English.
We can't wait to hear, metaphorically speaking, how you use these new tools. Thanks for diving deep with us. See you next time.